I get a few minutes to talk, and I've been kind of, being like the last speaker and not having a presentation. I don't do it. I'm really kind of in the moment and wing it every time that I talk, and been stewing all day of what I want to talk about. And I don't have any degrees. I have numbers after my name. I don't have letters. I was kicked out of school. The last time I was in jail, I was in like the 5-point restraints, and I had, in the wheelchair, and they were like ushering me around, and I was like looking at the other inmates like I was Hannibal Lecter, so, because I'm not very big, but I'm crazy, right? So, ask my girlfriend. That was the last time I was there, and I tell you, like, I tried to get sober for like 12 years, and I'd get like 3 months, and then I'd fall back to what I was doing. And for a long time, I thought that maybe I was a failure. Like this was the best that life was going to be. The only way that I'm going to be sober or in recovery of some sort is if I'm locked up, right? And it was because I didn't have access, right? And every time I got back out in the community, it lasted for about 3 months, and then I'd be drinking again, doing drugs or whatever. Today, my thought's different. I don't think that I was failing. I think that I was a success, not right now, right? And I think we've really pushed the boundaries with F5 Project on what is recovery. And I want to say today that I think we get so fixated on the idea of what recovery is that we forget that there's many roads to recovery, right? And we think that there's some magic bullet, and once we get sober and we get into recovery, we think that everybody else should be taking that road, because that's the road that works, right? But I've learned after opening houses and speaking at treatment centers and going to speaking at schools and in jails and prisons that there is no single way, but there's one thing that is common across all the threshold: community, right? As soon as somebody comes out of treatment, detox, homeless shelters, prisons, jails, school, work, whatever, right? They're coming back into the community. And what does that community look like, right? And so like F5 Project, it was really important to me that we were engaging and not just giving someone a place to stay, but giving them a home, right? Somewhere where they can come and be safe. Whether they go to NA or AA, or Smart Recovery, or Recovery Worship, or they decide to do it on their own, right? I think the one thing that goes along with community is experience, right? Maybe they find out on their own that on my own doesn't work. It's better than me telling them on your own is not going to work. What did I learn in the last 12 years? Experience. I tried so many different things, right? And there is a very fine line, and I used to say it like there's a very fine line between a felon and an entrepreneur, but I think there's a very fine line between an entrepreneur and a person in recovery, right? There's a lot of books out there on how to be sober, but it's different when you try it, right? There's a lot of books out there on how to start a business, but it's different when you try it, right? And I've been trying to get sober for like the last, sober, don't get me wrong, I'm sober, right? But I've been trying to be in recovery for the last 5 years. It's like starting a new business. Everything is brand new. And my story is a community recovery story, right? Because when I got sober, I was 2 weeks sober, and I got a job at a place called High Point Networks. Never hired a felon before, right? I had 5 of them. When they interviewed me, there was like 8 people in the interview, right? And I was like, I'm natural at this. I've been interrogated and had jury trials before. You know what I mean? The CEO's at the front, right? He's the judge, and I knew which one was the prosecutor, which, I played it all in my head. I was like, I shine in these moments, right? And I nailed the interview. I did good, right? They gave me an offer to work there. They knew I didn't have a license. They knew I didn't have a car, right? I lived out in Horace, which is 11 miles out of town, and they were in West Fargo, right? I didn't even know how I was going to get back and forth to work. But if there's one thing I've learned from entrepreneurs is it doesn't matter. Just put forth the effort and see what happens. And if there's like 3 things that I've learned that entrepreneurs, felons, addicts all have in common. It's effort, attitude, and trust, right? What are you doing? What are you eating today? What's your, right? EAT. And what does my effort look like today? What's my attitude look like? And how am I trying to build trust? And I guarantee, like that, when they gave me that job at 2 weeks, it was a job beyond my means. All I had ever done is wash cars, serve tables, work construction, right? I love, like, don't get me wrong, I miss working construction, right? But when I got into the sales world, and I had to like show up to work like at 8 a.m., well, maybe I got there at 9. I was supposed to be there at 8, right? But I know Tom's here, but my old boss. But like getting to work and not having a car, right? Like, I'm telling you that builds trust with your employer. He knows that you don't have a car, or she knows that you don't have a car, but you're showing up every day. And when you get there, what's your attitude look like, right? I think a lot of times we talk about how the employer should look on creating recovery cultures, but they don't know anything about it until they have someone who's working there that's in recovery, right? You may be the only example that they ever see right in front of them that's in recovery. Everything else they learn from the media, they learn from celebrities, they learn from whatever, right? They're not going to functions like this. This is brand new. There's a lot of employers here, and this is rare for me to see at stuff like this. But they don't know unless you are a leading example of what it's like to be in recovery and build that trust and show them your effort and have a good attitude while you're there, right? I'll tell you, like one of the stories that I have that when I worked at High Point is they like, in the sales world, it's a drinking culture, right? Recovery is not very, prominent with salespeople. I don't know if you know any salespeople. They're usually alcoholics. But there's a couple here probably. And so like when we would go to the bar and have like sales conversations, or we take vendors out or take clients out, and I would go with, because drinking never really, like when other people were drinking, it never really bothered me. It was when they started to have too many, right? And I knew when that switch was starting to happen. And I had an agreement with my boss that I wouldn't even say bye. I would just get up and walk out. And he knew from the conversation that we had that was my cue, that I just needed to go. And I'd usually go to some meeting or something like that, right? Or he made it very like accommodating for me that when I was at work, if I needed to just go to a meeting, I just went, right? I'm not saying that every employer should do that. There's jobs where you have to be there for 8 hours. But you can engage and have conversations. Know who your employees are, right? Know them by their names, what their, I'm not saying like you should know what their drug of choice is and stuff like that, but you should know if they're in recovery, right? And then it's your job to be that example of what recovery can do and be better than the rest of the people. Show up to work on time, perform better, right? And so I got my license back while I was there, right? And I was super stoked about it. I hadn't had my license in like 50. There's one guy clapping. He gets it. You know what I mean? So I go to work, and I'm like, it's a long story how I got my license back. Like in North Dakota, you can take it at any DMV you want in North Dakota. Closest one was Langdon, right? My boss's mom, I put it up on Facebook. I'm like, I need to go to Langdon to get my license. And my boss's mom reached out, and she's like, I'll take you. And I was like, that's weird. Okay. But, she gives me a ride up there. I spend the night in my boss's old childhood bed and stuff, like, taking selfies and sending it to him. Get my license, and I come back. I go to my job, right? And I go to the VP, and I was just like, Justin, dude, you're never going to believe this. This is amazing. I got my license back today. And he's like typing at the keyboard. He's like, that's awesome. I've had mine since I was 16, bro. It's like, I'm like, wow, I'll just go to AA and tell them, right? So, I tell you that, like, if you're a company that really preaches culture, remember everyone, right? There's people that have felony backgrounds. There's people that are in recovery. There's people that are actively using. There's people that have generational trauma. There's people that have moved, that have gone through racism, right? There's people that have gone through a lot of trauma in every facet, right? And I think that when the more we know about the people and the more conversations we have with the people that work for us, the better we can engage and create a community, right? And it wasn't just work. I needed to find a safe place to go. And actually, the sales manager who works for me on the F5 Venture side, I was living in Horace, and it was a good situation when I started there. But you know just as well as I do that even when you live with people in recovery, it doesn't always stay good, right? I tell the guys in the houses all the time, this may be the last time I ever see you. You know what I mean? That's how real it is. We're not just, people get drunk and then they drive and then they die. People stick needles in their arm and it's too much and they were used to taking more and they thought they could do it and they die, right? It may be the last time we see any of us because we never know when it goes, right? But we can do things today with effort, attitude, and trust that can stop us from going down there. We can prevent it by building a community around us, engaging everyone around us, and treating everyone with the same level of respect, whether they're a day sober, negative 10 days sober, or they're 10 years sober, right? We're all one community. We're all one family, right? And when Curtis took me in and out of a bad situation, I was about a year sober, and I sent a picture of like all the alcohol in the house. I came back from a retreat, and I sent it to him, and he didn't even question it. He was like, you can move in tomorrow, right? He had been sober for a long time, and he got it, you know? And that was where everything kind of took off. I was in a safe place. I had a safe job. I had safe friends. The community built up around me, and by the time I hit around, I think, 4 years sober, just before 4 years sober, I got asked to speak at this United Way event, and everything changed. I always had a love for guys that were in prison that were struggling, and guys that were in jail, and people in detox and homeless shelters. Why? Because I've been to Churches United. I've lived there. I've lived in the New Life Center. I've lived in halfway houses. I've been to Prairie St. John's. I've been to Share House. I've been to Fergus Falls Treatment Center. I went to Minnesota Teen Challenge, right? I went to a bunch of places. For 12 years, I was called failure and felon and addict and alcoholic, right? And it wasn't even the addicts and the alcoholics that saved me. It was the normal people at my job. It was the normal people that gave me housing, right? He was an alcoholic, but it wasn't about that. He just wanted to give a safe place. He knew how important a safe house was, right? And when people are coming out of prison and they don't have a safe place to go, and they don't have safe friends to talk to, and they don't have a safe job to go to, and the culture at the job is just as bad as the trap house that they're living in, and you're expecting them to play Tetris on level 77 when they've never played the game before, right? And then you get punitive, and then you send them back to prison, and you're expecting them to just break out of this cycle on their own. It wasn't until Curtis reached out and gave me a safe place. It wasn't until Tom gave me a safe job, right? I couldn't produce those things. But I'll tell you what, I can now, right? I may not be able to pay you back. We got a long history of alcoholism in our family. My dad lived off the system, my mom lived off the system, my grandma lived off the system, my brothers, whatever, right? And they may never, I just heard this on a video the other day, they may never be able to pay you back for all the money they took from the states or whatever, the welfare and stuff like that, but their kids will, right? I will do my best every day to pay you back because I don't see my mom as a failure. I don't see my dad who died of alcoholism as a failure. I don't see my brother as a failure. I don't see anybody I don't see failures in the prisons and in the jails. I see a different game that needs to be played, right? I envision employers that give second chances, right? But create a culture around them, with them. I envision property managers that not look the other way, but work with them. If they can't find a place with your company, I know you know people that rent to felons, right? Work with them. Don't just take their application fee and send them away, right? We can do this together as a community. I know it because it was community members that raised me up. And it was the recovery communities that sustained me, right? And it's this community that's going to take North Dakota to the next level, right? Where I see reentry houses in every city. I see, I'm talking about Redemption Road and Gladys Ray, Churches United, share houses all over North Dakota, right? May not be as big as Fargo, but something is better than nothing. And if there's anything I can do about it, is I'll be a vocal piece for it to let you know that there was a lot of people that were playing this game before F5 got here, right? And they didn't get the recognition. And I've named a lot of them off today, but there's a lot of individuals in this room that have been doing this for a long time. And I'm at where I'm at today because of you guys for setting the foundation. One of those places is the jail chaplains, setting the foundations of bringing meetings into the jail. Had you not been there and proven that stuff works when you bring programs into the jail, F5 probably wouldn't be there. If Redemption Road wasn't doing housing, F5 probably wouldn't be here, right? If the homeless shelters weren't doing what they were doing, we probably wouldn't be here, right? There is a whole group of people that are doing stuff, and they deserve the spotlight just as much as anybody else. As much as the employers, as much as the schools, the free through recovery, the peer supports that are coming out, the care coordinators. North Dakota is a different game today, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Thank you for your time.